Is Meghan Markle a modern-day Anne Boleyn without the sword, and Diana without the public's affection? That is what Catherine Mayer is arguing, seemingly in her forthcoming book, Divide and Rule, where she very much takes the stance as a Meghan apologetist.
Trying to just explain that the poor woman, she just couldn't communicate across the cultural divide, between Americans and Britons. We don't have any shared history or language, and it's just too gosh darn hard to communicate.
She also tried to make the equations between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana, saying that just the institution was against her. And why are we just so critical of Meghan Markle? Could it be that it's just us? And
Meghan is just a poor, misunderstood young woman who didn't spend years upon years in Hollywood, doesn't have a degree from Northwestern University, wasn't on a television show for 7 years. I mean, the woman was just too naive. She just didn't quite understand it. That is absolute insanity. So we are going to attack this horrifically awful argument today and poke holes in this premise, which I think comes from a mixture of historical illiteracy and willful ignorance.
Into this book, which is sort of insane from what I can tell so far. There are excerpts that have been published in the Daily Mail, and it's very, very much taking the stance of Meghan is just this poor little bird who just didn't understand the palace system, wanted to make the servants her friend, but was not sure if they were going to spy on her or if they really wanted to be her friends. Because we're living in Tudor times.
I guess, as the book alludes to, also tries to make comparisons between Meghan Markle and Princess Diana and just basically say, Meghan, as an American, she just couldn't bridge the cultural divide. It's just so challenging to understand British English. It's just too hard to Google God Save the King, even though it's in English. It was just way too hard for Meghan. Despite the fact that we have royals who have crossed continents in order to marry their loves, of course, one of the first major ones is a fellow American,
Grace Kelly, who married into the Monaco royal family, had to learn French and struggled quite a bit to learn it, raised her 3 children, and tragically died in a car accident. Very similar to Princess Diana. We, of course, have as well Princess Kelly of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. She has married into a German principality, and I would imagine now probably speaks fluent German, although I haven't heard her speak. I have, though, seen her in person, which was quite
an awesome experience. And most notably, we have Queen Mary of Denmark, who traveled from Australia down under in Tasmania all the way over to Denmark to follow and marry her love, now King Frederick
of Denmark. She's raised 4 children, speaks fluent Danish, even though she still struggles with some words, and has become much beloved
by the country. And we also have Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, who I shall hopefully see within the next week or two, who speaks now fluent Dutch after being raised in Argentina. She also speaks English. And so when she met her husband, she had to dedicate herself to learning Dutch, embracing a new country and new culture, which is not easy. Here's the thing about becoming royal. It's not as easy as people think. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy.
And Meghan Markle didn't even have the language barrier that these other women had. And yet Meghan Markle is like, oh, it's too hard. It's too hard. Like Catherine's like, and guys, when I'm talking about Catherine, I'm meaning the author Catherine, not the Princess of Wales. Princess of Wales, just for clarity's sake, will be referred to as Kate, just to make it a bit easier. Yes, it's a little confusing, but that's what we have to do. Trying to coddle this woman who married her husband in her mid-30s. She wasn't in her early 20s or mid-20s. She was in her mid-30s, had well experienced the world at this point, had traveled all over the world by her own bragging and boasting.
And so how in the world is it that somehow Meghan Markle couldn't make it? Is it because of the palace, the press, the other members of the royal family? Or could it be the much more likely possibility and reality that Meghan Markle just didn't want to make it and as well wanted her husband to leave his family for Hollywood? Because that has always been my estimation. Meghan Markle never cared about the British royal family. They were always a means to an end for her. And yet again, Catherine Mayer tries to make echoes between Anne Boleyn and Princess Diana. Now, when it comes to journalists attempting to do history, I'm of 2 minds. Sometimes they can do it well, and sometimes they can do it poorly. I kind of guess Catherine is the one type of person who's going to do it really poorly. The author of this book, I should say, in this instance and when it comes to Princess Diana.
There's really nothing in common between Diana and Meghan, except for their worst tendencies. Diana could be a bit toxic, and Meghan Markle takes that to another level. Beyond that, the two women and their experiences in the royal family are profoundly different.
So I think it's important to go over this article and poke holes on the many places we can poke holes in, because this whole book, I think it's going to be quite weak on multiple levels. It's going to be a combination of willful ignorance on the part of the author and an historical illiteracy as well. But let's go ahead, because you're probably wondering, what are we talking about? Well, it's this year it's been serialized in the Daily Mail.
The title of the article is "The Warning Signs Everyone Missed That Meghan Marrying into the Royal Family Was Doomed to End a Disaster." From her Californian background, because, since she was from California, she couldn't make this work, to her and Harry's shared personality traits in the worst possible way. The clues were obvious from the start, says Catherine Mayer in her riveting new book. I think, of course, it was doomed to failure from the beginning, but because Meghan Markle wanted it to be doomed from the beginning, because she wanted to drag Harry across the ocean to California, to Hollywood, to finally take her shot. She had tried for years to be famous, and she finally got a willing and dim man who was kind of too dumb to realize that she was just using him, and suckered him into her world, and everybody knew
that this was going to end badly. They all tried to warn Harry against marrying her because they all knew she was using him. So let's get into the weeds here. Starts off talking about the wedding, and then talks about how they were in Windsor Chapel. The Tudor Henrys are buried here too. So to Jane Seymour, Edward VII, and in an annex to George VI, his wife, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and Princess Margaret. I don't know why they went with George VI and Princess Margaret when they obviously should have included Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. That is sort of a huge miss. It shows to me as well that this author probably really doesn't know what she's talking about all that much. Over bones and dust. Oh, that's a lovely description of the church, although I do think it's kind of...
Meghan glides towards her groom. Does she take Harry for richer or for poorer? The new Duke of Sussex turns pink with happiness. And no, Harry, your wife does not take you for poor. You were too poor when she married you, and she wanted you to be richer. That is why you're in Montecito right now.
A hereditary monarchy is an unlikely engine of change, even though it's changed dramatically over the centuries. But the family's first biracial member, first declared feminist, and in a sign of institutional shift, the first divorcee permitted to marry a Windsor in the Church of England, seems a hint at good progress.
And I know they say this again later, but the emphasis by some in the media, and I would say sometimes more liberal end of the political spectrum, that diversity for the sake of diversity is good, is sort of wrong in many ways. Because I'm open to anyone. If you have a good idea, if you have a good path, hey, come forward. That's absolutely fantastic. But there's people who want diversity just for the sake of diversity, and it's tokenism.
And because Meghan Markle is marrying the spare, she and Harry cannot, ladies and gentlemen, be the institutional change. Because fundamentally they are irrelevant to the constitutional monarchy. They are not the ones who really have to live and enact the decisions they make at a higher level. That is William, that is Charles, that is Elizabeth, and that's who those things should be left to. And George, once he's old enough, because they're the ones who are going to have to live with it. She just marrying in and marrying the spare. I'm sorry, but it's not her job to change. And again, who cares if she's a feminist? Although we've seen now where I think it means she sort of hates men and is not that keen on having a son because her son is not as featured as prominently in her own Instagram. And Meghan does that. So she says, I click on the screen, scroll back, study the footage again. To revisit these scenes is to peer down the wrong end of a telescope. The optimism of that day as distant as the moon, or at least California, where the Sussexes have lived in exile since 2020, which was their choice.
And the optimism was misplaced. The people wanted to be optimistic because they believed Meghan wanted to be part of this family. She never wanted to be part of that family. She didn't care. She didn't even want to be part of her own family. Oh, the Windsors. How did the dream crumble? There was no dream. It was always an illusion. Even those of us who warned, don't do or die, back in the 1980s, somehow dared to imagine a better outcome for Meghan Markle when she married into the royal family in 2018. Again, compared to Meghan and Diana. Diana was a naive 20-year-old young woman.
Was she 19 when they got engaged? She was a baby. Meghan Markle was a 35-year-old freaking woman who had lived a good life, had been married before. You can't play the don't do it die naive thing that happened back in the 1980s. You can't play that card. Meghan Markle was well aware she had sought the spotlight for her entire stinking career. She's different. We told ourselves we weren't wrong, but that difference would count against her. She was different because she didn't actually want to be part of the institution. She didn't care.
It was always a means to an end. How on earth did so many people who saw what happened to Princess Diana fall for the princess myth yet again? Why all these comparisons to Diana? There is nothing, literally, Princess Diana died at the same age as Meghan Markle married her son. What?
And this again goes to this is an older woman because she's mentioning the don't do it die back in the 1980s. So she's an older woman. So she connects very strongly obviously to Diana. A lot of people do, but she totally does not understand the actual current context of the monarchy. I remember the day Diana died in 1997. After a colleague woke me with the news of a car crash in Paris. I headed to Buckingham Palace.
Diana died in a very stupid and avoidable way, in a drunk driving accident because she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. I don't say that to be cruel. I say that to say that sometimes people die in shocking ways that were so avoidable. And it's almost stupid. It's like, no, how did that happen? Because she was such a larger than life figure. How did she die in just such a pedestrian, avoidable way? But you know what? Sometimes that happens. The palace had nothing to do with it.
She died in a drunk driving accident. The guy driving the car was drunk and she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. The only person who survived that crash that killed 3 people was a gentleman who was her bodyguard wearing a seatbelt. Wear seatbelt, people. It saves lives. Just saying. Over the following days, that accusation gained currency. But few meant it literally. Anger centered on the perceptions of the royal family hung Diana out to dry. But that was part of here that we're not getting is Diana how she was manipulated by Martin Bashir? Because we found that out now. So to say this was the royal family leaving Diana out to dry was actually false because it was Martin Bashir who kind of raised her hackles and got her paranoid about the palace supposedly maybe trying to kill her. That led her to declining Scotland Yard protection. That would have saved her life. Wasn't the royal family, it was Martin Bashir. It was other people manipulating her. So again, this is this author's, I think, antagonism towards the monarchy misplaced. Because publications is so impressive anymore, not really frequently covering royal matters. I agreed that the Windsors had contributed to Diana's vulnerability.
If you assume this description of Meghan, you're right. But here's the thing. The same details applied word for word to Anne Boleyn. No, they don't. Totally different circumstances. Totally different scenarios, totally different freaking centuries.
And not to mention the fact Anne Boleyn was the queen. Meghan Markle was again the wife of the freaking spare. Totally different roles within the institution. You also have the added aspect of Henry wanting a boy, not getting a boy. Anne was as well very, very key in bringing Britain to Protestantism because she was really pushing it with Henry. And yes, of course, that led to the Church of England and the break with the Catholic Church for, let's say, some silly reasons because he wanted to marry Anne. But she was actually quite a religious woman. And so what we're getting from Catherine, I think, is a caricature, not the real thing. And I think changing the monarchy, in terms of looking at religion a bit differently, I think is actually a more worthwhile ambition than going, well, I'm not getting enough money for my clothes and I want more clothes. And that's kind of Meghan Markle's level.